Daily criminal chronicles sometimes shock with their cruelty to such an extent that they make even the most resilient people shudder. Such cases force us to rethink the very nature of human behavior and morality. However, it is important to remember that such incidents are the exception rather than the rule, as the vast majority of society consists of quite peaceful citizens. In any case, the heroes of today's story clearly overstepped the bounds of cultural differences, which led to the death of 2 people. This event took place in Sweden and became another reason to focus attention on long-standing problems. Saga Elneborg, the 20-year-old Saga, was 7 months pregnant. During this period, she was dating Magamadin Ibrahim, the father of her unborn child. Their relationship had lasted about 2 years. The girl called him Amin. The couple was eagerly awaiting the arrival of their son. According to all doctors' forecasts, the baby was doing well. So in just a few weeks, Saga was to become a mother. She was preparing for this momentous event with great enthusiasm. The expectant mother carefully arranged the baby's room, bought necessary things, performed special exercises, and gathered all the necessary accessories. The pregnancy brought Saga incredible joy. During this period, she kept a kind of diary on social networks. She posted photos of her growing belly and various purchases for the baby. She especially enjoyed making posts with tiny clothes. Melissa, Saga's mother, occasionally visited her daughter to help her. The day before the tragedy, on December 28th, Saga told her mother that her beloved was going to visit her so that they could be alone. Recently, more and more controversial moments had arisen in the couple, so the boyfriend did not visit his pregnant girlfriend as often. On this day, Saga mentioned to her mother that Amin was going to stop by, so the woman decided not to interfere with their conversation. Saga was an attractive, bright, but at the same time kind and well-mannered girl. Since school, she had a wide circle of friends and easily found common ground with people. The Saga dreamed of creating a strong family and giving birth to children. Thanks to her beauty, she had many admirers, so Melissa was shocked when she saw Amin on the doorstep of her house. Relatives were wary of a relationship with a boy from a different culture, understanding the potential difficulties when meeting his Somali family. Especially after the daughter began to tell in detail about the problems that had arisen in their relationship. But despite everything, Saga radiated enthusiasm and optimism. In love with Amin, she sought to preserve their relationship. However, it bothered her that the guy constantly hid her from his parents. Because of this, conflicts often flared up between the couple. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon on April 29, 2023, Melissa Elneborg came to her daughter Saga, who lived in a residential complex in the city of Orebro, located 100 kilometers from Stockholm. She was going to help her daughter and pick up a few things that had accumulated in anticipation of the birth of her grandson. When Melissa arrived at the apartment, she was talking on the phone with her other daughter. The woman rang the doorbell, but no one opened it. Melissa tried a few more times, but again there was no reaction. This surprised her. The woman knocked and then used the intercom. She called her daughter's phone and texted her. To Melissa's surprise, no response came. The woman assumed that Saga had simply forgotten about her mother's arrival and had gone out on business. However, Melissa had a way to get into the apartment without her daughter's knowledge. She simply did not want to disturb the young people. The woman had a spare key, but when she approached the door to use it, she found that the lock was not locked. This looked extremely suspicious. Saga was always very careful. She locked the doors, even if she went out for a minute to pick up mail or went down to the laundry room. Saga would never leave the door open when leaving the house. When Melissa found herself in the apartment, she heard water running in the kitchen. She ran there and turned off the faucet. The woman shouted, "Daughter," but there was no answer. In the next room, where the light was not on, she noticed something strange. Entering and turning on the light, Melissa screamed in horror when she saw her daughter on the floor. Saga lay motionless, pale, her face was covered with hair, and a table lamp cord was wrapped around her neck. But the most terrible thing was that a heavy table with a tabletop was overturned and pressing on Saga's throat. Melissa rushed to her daughter in a panic. She instantly pushed the table away and removed the cord from the victim's neck. Then the woman called an ambulance, while trying to provide first aid to Saga. The first thing she noticed was that the body had already managed to cool down. To the touch, it was very cold. It was obvious from everything that Saga had died quite a long time ago. Despite this, Melissa tried to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation. The ambulance arrived quickly, but as expected, the medics only pronounced the death of the young woman and her unborn child. The police officers who arrived at the scene carefully examined the apartment and the body. Saga had injuries to her head and face. It was all covered in clotted blood mixed with matted hair. There were no obvious signs of a struggle in the dwelling. However, some pieces of furniture were scattered. Jewelry boxes were overturned, and their contents were scattered on the floor. At the same time, no signs of breaking and entering were found. So at first, the detectives even considered the version of suicide. Of course, thanks to the help of the police and checking the data of the deceased's mobile phone, it was possible to find out that she could not voluntarily take her own life. Saga had no mental disorders or problems. On the contrary, she was full of life and happy, especially since she became pregnant. Saga was looking forward to the appearance of the child and could not kill herself and the baby. Forensic experts collected several sets of fingerprints at the crime scene. They also took DNA samples from under the victim's nails and from furniture for further analysis. The forensic expert determined that Saga died from strangulation. Probably, the time of death fell between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning. Not only the 20-year-old mother, but also a boy weighing 1.7 kilograms ended up on the forensic expert's table. According to the results of the studies and analyses, it was found out that he was absolutely healthy. These conclusions only intensified Melissa's anger, who demanded just punishment for the criminal. What happened came as a real shock to Saga's mother, her entire family and friends. No one suspected that a villain capable of a brutal massacre could be so close to her. Saga was too far from the criminal world to end her life path so tragically. Detectives immediately began an investigation, talking with the relatives of the deceased. Of course, the first was Saga's mother, named Melissa. The woman said that on April 28th, her daughter was going to meet with several friends at a local restaurant and spend time. Melissa herself also joined this company. She noticed that her daughter was constantly nervous and often checked her mobile phone. It seemed that Saga was worried. She said that she did not want to miss a message from her boyfriend. Saga shared that the young man was finally going to tell his relatives about her. But he was afraid that they would not correctly perceive the fact that Saga was in her 7th month of pregnancy, and at the same time, the couple had not officially married. According to Saga, Amin was very worried about this and was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, because he knew that most likely, his parents would not approve of this relationship. They were Somalis, Muslims, adhered to strictly conservative views. Saga herself was a citizen of Sweden, half Thai, half European, had modern views, and her boyfriend, along with his family, turned out to be a refugee. The father and mother brought him when he was still a small child. In fact, Amin himself grew up in Europe, was more modern than his family, but respected traditions. It was also a big problem that his family members were Muslims, while Saga's relatives were Christians. Due to the difference in views and traditions, conflicts often flared up between them, and the relationship was rather tense. After visiting the restaurant, Saga said goodbye to her mother and friends. They wished Saga good luck, not suspecting that they were seeing her alive for the last time. It turned out that after returning home, Saga was killed. Detectives assumed that Amin could have managed to tell his family about his relationship, which caused their aggressive reaction, which led to the tragedy. For this reason, at an early stage of the investigation, the possible involvement of the young man's relatives in the murder was checked. Suspicion was aroused by the behavior of the guy's mother, who left the house late in the evening. But later it was possible to confirm that she simply went to the store and returned in about 15 minutes. No evidence of the involvement of Amin's relatives in the murder was found. The woman also aroused suspicion with her aggressive attitude towards her son. Once she found out that the car that Amin was using was parked near Saga's house. By this time, the family already suspected that their son had a relationship with a Christian woman. After the incident with the car, the mother furiously wrote to Amin that the guy was no longer a welcome guest in her house. She believed that if he violates traditions, "It is better to cut him off." But the young man insisted that he did not go to those people's house, and he managed to convince his mother of this, but with great difficulty. According to Melissa, from the very beginning of the pregnancy, the relationship in the couple deteriorated. There were rumors that Amin insisted on an abortion, fearing a negative reaction from his family. Despite this, Saga decided to keep the pregnancy and give birth to the baby. Saga stated that, if necessary, she would be able to raise him on her own. Back in the fall, in October, she told her family about the pregnancy. Everyone was happy, just like Saga herself. Nevertheless, during this period, the couple was on the verge of breaking up. Saga often complained that her boyfriend's culture was so different from what was accepted in Sweden that it would be difficult for them to find a common language if he did not change his vision. However, after a few months, everything seemed to normalize. The young man adapted to her life and resigned himself to the fact of pregnancy. It seemed that he was also happy at the prospect of becoming a father. After that, Saga moved to a new apartment. She decided to rent a dwelling with a larger area and a nursery, which she began to equip. Until March 2023, the couple still maintained a relationship, but alarming moments arose. For example, a woman named Diana turned to Saga and secretly told her that Amin had tried to persuade her to attack Saga. He insisted that it was necessary to kick her in the stomach several times to provoke a miscarriage. Saga made a scandal, but the guy assured that all this was a lie. Melissa knew about all these frightening details. The police began to restore the chronology of events. It was quickly established that on April 27th, Amin and Saga were supposed to spend the evening together. However, it turned out that he was avoiding her, as if deliberately delaying at work so as not to see his beloved. That evening, Saga gave him an ultimatum, stating that he must inform his family about their relationship, as well as about the move and pregnancy, otherwise they would break up. On April 28th, the young people were working. Practically the whole day they corresponded in messengers, and she was waiting for news from him. According to Melissa, her daughter was restless during this period. It seemed to her that Saga was very nervous. Of course, this was due to the intensity of passions during the dialogue with her boyfriend. Detectives checked Saga's mobile phone. It was possible to confirm that until 11 o'clock in the evening on April 28th, there was active correspondence with the guy. At 11:15, Saga's boyfriend said that he would not tell his parents about Saga and their relationship. The young man argued that his family was more important to him than an extramarital child. Saga was clearly disappointed with her beloved's decision and continued to persuade him to take this step. According to her, they would find out about the child anyway if they broke up, since the young mother was going to seek financial support from him. Judging by all the correspondence, the young people agreed that the boyfriend would finally tell his family about Saga and the baby. The man replied that he was so worried that his heart was about to jump out of his chest. And this was his last message to his beloved, a few hours after which she was killed. In the opinion of the detectives, Saga's persistence and the risk of exposure that she herself would inform the young man's relatives could give Amin a strong motive for the attack. In fact, he was the only suspect in this case. The young man was taken for interrogation. The 22-year-old guy insisted that he was not involved in what happened. According to him, in the evening when the murder took place, he went to his family to confess his relationship with Saga. However, judging by the geolocation data, this was not true. In fact, he headed to his girlfriend's apartment. Interestingly, at first they did not tell Amin what had happened to Saga. It seems that during the interrogation he behaved strangely, kept too calm, even joked with the detectives. When they named the address of the apartment where Saga's body was found, he did not even change his face. It seemed that the suspect was pretending that he did not know the address. When he was told that he was the main suspect in the murder, Amin went on the defensive. The deceased's boyfriend claimed that he was not responsible for what happened and had an alibi. The man assured that at the time of Saga's murder, he was driving with a friend. However, the mentioned friend was talking on the phone with other people and refused to testify in Amin's defense. Despite the failure of the alibi, the suspect insisted that he last saw Saga only on the evening of December 27th. But this already began to contradict his previous statements. After all, we were talking about the same apartment. the address of which he allegedly did not know. The suspect young man began to say that he came here and talked with his girlfriend about sore points, in particular about the need to confess to his parents. In turn, Saga insisted that Amin move in with her so that the young people could create a full-fledged family. During the investigation, detectives confirmed that the boyfriend had never spent the whole night with her in the new apartment. Fearing that his family would expose him, the young man repeatedly promised to arrange a move. But when it came to confirming promises, he refused every time under various pretexts. Due to the suspicious behavior of the young man, it was decided to arrest him and take him into custody until the circumstances were clarified. Amin was imprisoned for several months. Finally, the prosecution was able to provide convincing evidence of his guilt. According to the prosecutor's office, there was more than enough material for a victory at the hearings. During the investigation, even specially trained dogs were used, which made it possible to confirm the belonging of several pieces of evidence and traces at once. The lawyer insisted that using a dog as the main argument was not possible, since it was not a sufficiently reliable source of information. Nevertheless, these were far from the only evidence. They waited the longest for the comparison of the analysis and DNA materials, which dispelled all doubts. Magamadin turned out to be the killer. Detectives convincingly proved that it was he who strangled his girlfriend by wrapping a lamp cord around her neck when Saga was sleeping on the sofa. However, according to the police, this was not enough for the villain. He dragged Saga to the floor and pushed a 30-kilogram table up to her. Apparently, he tried to knock the table over on her stomach in order to interrupt the pregnancy in this way. However, Saga desperately resisted, so she was able to protect the baby, receiving a hip injury in the process. Then the criminal decided to push the victim with the same tabletop and put it on edge on Saga's throat. Saga was exhausted, stopped resisting, suffocating, unable to throw off the heavy object. When Saga died, the tabletop remained on her throat, pressing her to the floor. Subsequently, it left a deep mark on her body. After the cold-blooded crime, Amin staged a robbery by scattering several drawers. The defense, on the other hand, insisted that Saga had fallen victim to robbers who had stolen money and several household appliances. The prosecution believed that this staging only aggravated the degree of the criminal's guilt. The fact is that a number of missing items were later found in Amin's possession during searches. The young man, in turn, claimed that these were his personal belongings, as well as those that his friend had given him. A weighty argument was the fact that traces of the guy's DNA were found under the victim's nails. In addition, the forensic expert found out that Saga had sexual intercourse with a partner shortly before her death. He insisted that this happened by mutual agreement when Saga was still alive, a few days before her death. Of course, the prosecution doubted the veracity of the criminal's words. The prosecution also focused the jury's attention on the lies that permeated all the interrogations of the suspect. A lot of traces of his DNA were found in the victim's apartment. Despite the fact that at first the boyfriend claimed that he did not know this address at all and had never been there. The investigators even managed to prove that a woman named Diana, who complained about Amin, was really telling the truth. Several alarming records were found in the young man's search history. In particular, he tried to find out if a kick to a mother's stomach could kill an unborn child. Numerous correspondence between the characters of the story, which was conducted since November 2022, was demonstrated at the hearings. It was during this period that discord began between them on the basis of pregnancy. Judging by the latest dialogues between the lovers, which took place on April 28th, Saga tried in every possible way to encourage Amin to finally tell his family about her. She was clearly pressuring him, which the defendant's defenders also referred to. However, this in no way justified the crime committed. The prosecution was confident that instead of going to his relatives, the criminal came to his girlfriend's apartment. He never intended to tell his family about her, fearing their reaction. But Saga drove him into a corner with her demands. Here he dealt with her in cold blood and cruelly, because of a banal fear of his parents. The defense believed that the DNA samples of the accused under the victim's nails could have appeared a long time ago, since the couple was in a relationship. However, Melissa insisted that her daughter regularly took a shower and did it shortly before her death. Saga's mother knew firsthand about Saga's cleanliness, especially during pregnancy. Sometimes it seemed to her that Saga was even excessively picky about these issues. She definitely could not remain dirty for more than a day from the moment of meeting with the guy. It was obvious that the expectant mother had taken a shower and put on clean clothes. So all the DNA traces that remained on her body and things were fresh and appeared precisely in the process of reprisal. Interestingly, after Saga's death, Amin immediately deleted her from his Snapchat, from social media pages, and also cleared the correspondence for the last few days. It became clear to the detectives that he was trying to hide his connection with the crime. The deleted data was easily restored and replenished the treasury of incriminating evidence. Although there was no direct evidence here, the behavior of the killer clearly indicated that Saga was not indifferent to him. During the investigation, it was possible to record that around 8 o'clock in the evening, Magamadin Amin was near his beloved's apartment building. At the same time, he continued to correspond, being at a distance, not approaching and not moving away, as if waiting for something. Probably, during this period, he tried to gather the courage for an attack or wanted to make sure that Saga would fall asleep. Then there was a sharp silence. As it turned out, in the period from midnight to 2 o'clock in the morning, the guy's mobile phone was not used. At the same time, his friend Samir tried to contact him. He called, but was ignored, since the attacker had airplane mode activated. The call signal was recorded in the same residential complex where Saga moved. This also made it possible to expose another lie of the main suspect. According to him, during this period he was at home with his parents. Amin's mobile phone only started working at 2:16 in the morning. This time exactly coincided with the forensic expert's conclusion about the time of death of the young mother and baby. The defendant's story repeatedly changed. At some point, he invented a real gang of robbers. According to his confession, he hid a bag of money in Saga's house, but never told where he got the large sum from. According to the accused, the robbers broke into Saga's house to steal the bag of cash. Obviously, Saga tried to prevent this and became a victim of murder. The prosecution was able to refute these statements. In particular, no signs of breaking and entering were found. It was obvious that Saga let her killer involuntarily, or he had a key to the apartment. Naturally, this corresponded to the capabilities of Magamadin Amin. During the 9 months of imprisonment, the defendant never confessed to the crime. He completely denied his involvement, but during this period the prosecution managed to gather the main incriminating base, supported by direct and indirect evidence. Despite the absence of a confession, the young man did not deny that he was afraid to tell his family about Saga. According to him, he really loved his girlfriend, even the child, but was sure that the family would disown him for dishonor. And all this was really reinforced by the difference in religions, views on life, and cultural differences between the young people. Subsequently, the defendant even admitted that the views of his parents were so conservative that he, in principle, had no right to meet with a European girl, according to her. Having heard the arguments of the prosecution and defense, the jury left to discuss the verdict on November 9, 2024. The jurors unanimously concluded that Magamadin Ibrahim was guilty of the intentional murder of Saga. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. Despite this, the young man continued to insist that he loved both his girlfriend and his unborn son, and never intended to harm his loved ones. He claimed that murder was not in his nature, and this case really became the first criminal episode in his life. During the investigation, it was established that the killer often met with other women. This happened practically during all 2 years of the relationship with Saga. Despite the fact that he denied any connections on the side, it was proven that the defendant repeatedly met other girls, and the relationship often came to intimacy. This added dark colors to his image, which the lawyer tried in every possible way to whitewash. The defender continued to insist that Amin was not guilty of what happened, and Saga became a victim of a random robber. The lawyer assured that he would fight for the freedom of his client and plans to appeal the verdict. The appeal was filed immediately after the decision was made, but so far the result of this struggle is unclear. Despite the charges of murdering Saga Elneborg, no charges were brought in the death of his unborn child. This caused outrage in the family of the deceased, since the death of the baby was simply ignored. From the very beginning, this investigation attracted wide attention of the public and the mass media. The tragedy once again put on the agenda the issue of migrants, in particular from Muslim countries, who have been arriving in Sweden more and more often in recent years. People see that they have great difficulty integrating into European society and the value system, refuse to accept people of a different culture, despite the fact that they came, in fact, to visit them. The brutal murder on the basis of cultural and religious differences shook the public, and people again turned to the state, demanding that something be done. Others justified the young man, insisted that he was not guilty. In particular, his family said that the guy never had a tendency to cruelty. Many were really convinced by this, and he received tangible support. According to Saga's relatives, Magamadin Ibrahim was not ready to take on the responsibilities of a father, but the defendant continued to insist that he loves his girlfriend and son even after their death. The tragic case that occurred in Sweden between Saga Elneborg and Magamadin Ibrahim will forever remain in memory as a stunning example of how cultural contradictions and religious beliefs can lead to unspeakable tragedy. This story initially unfolded as an ordinary romantic narrative. Young people met, fell in love, planned a future together. However, deeply rooted traditions, fears, and prejudices turned out to be stronger than feelings of love and parental instinct. Magamadin, who at first glance demonstrated sincere feelings for his beloved and showed joy at the prospect of future fatherhood, found himself captive to his own inner conflicts. His consciousness, formed in a different cultural environment, could not accept the realities of the Western way of life. The internal struggle between personal desires and the pressure of traditional values led to a fatal decision that took the lives of two innocent people, a young woman and her unborn child. This tragedy shook not only Swedish society but also caused a wide resonance throughout Europe. It sharpened the discussion on the effectiveness of existing migrant integration programs, the need for a deeper study of the psychological aspects of cultural adaptation, and the importance of creating effective mechanisms to prevent such tragedies. Sociologists, psychologists, and migration experts began an active discussion of ways to bridge the cultural gap between different communities. The case of Saga and Magamadin became a catalyst for important social changes. It forced many to think about how to build a truly inclusive society where different cultures do not just coexist, but enrich each other. This is a story about how important it is to develop empathy, cultural sensitivity, and readiness for open dialogue. Only through mutual understanding and respect for differences is it possible to create an environment where every person will feel safe, regardless of their origin, faith, or traditions. If this story has interested you and you want to better understand such social phenomena, join the community of the Detective Brooks channel. Here you will find carefully researched materials about high-profile criminal cases, their investigation, and social context. Each story is not just a description of a crime, but a deep analysis of human destinies and the social problems behind them. Our goal is not only to inform but also to stimulate constructive dialogue about important social issues. Together, we can better understand the complexity of intercultural interaction and find ways to build a fairer and safer society. Subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and become part of a community that strives for positive change through understanding and dialogue.